The 1940s were not polite cinema. They were tense, dangerous, and quietly rebellious. Beneath the surface of polished dialogue and studio lighting, filmmakers pushed forbidden ideas into shadowy corners. Sex, violence, obsession, and moral collapse slipped past censors frame by frame. This series exposes 15 films that dared to go further than audiences were meant to see. These are the boldest movies of the decade. Uncut versus Theatrical. Truth versus Control. Number 15. The Moon is Blue, 1949, preview version. By the end of the 1940s, Hollywood censorship was cracking. The Moon is Blue became the final warning shot. Though officially released later, its preview version circulated in 1949 and caused outrage inside studio offices. The controversy was not violence or crime. It was words, simple, direct words like virgin seduce and pregnancy spoken without shame. That alone terrified the production code. The theatrical mindset demanded euphemism and moral punishment. Romance had to be symbolic. Desire had to be punished or disguised. The preview cut ignored these rules completely. Dialogue was frank, playful, and adult. Characters discussed sex as conversation, not sin. Censors demanded rewritten scenes and softer language. Entire lines were flagged as unacceptable simply for acknowledging reality. The uncut preview version flows with natural rhythm. Conversations feel modern and intimate. The characters speak like real people, not moral lessons. Theatrical expectations forced later edits that dulled the edge. Dialogue was trimmed. Reactions were softened. The tone shifted from daring to cautious. What makes this film bold is not imagery, but defiance. It proved censorship could be challenged with intelligence instead of spectacle. It opened a door that could not be closed again. The film showed that honesty alone could be revolutionary. By pushing language rather than flesh, it exposed the fragility of Hollywood control. This preview version represents the moment before the dam broke, the final breath of 40s restraint and the quiet birth of a new cinematic voice that would reshape the next decade. Number 14. Forever Amber. 1947 Forever Amber was scandal disguised as costume drama. On the surface, it was lavish historical romance. Underneath it was a story of ambition, sexual freedom, and survival without shame. The production code fought this film at every stage. Theatrical versions were the result of compromise, not vision. Amber is not punished quickly or quietly. She uses men power and beauty to rise in society. She has children out of wedlock. She survives without remorse. That alone made censors furious. Early cuts removed entire storylines involving illegitimacy and sexual independence. Dialogue was rewritten to frame Amber as tragic rather than defiant. Uncut material restores the true scope of her journey. Her choices feel deliberate. Her ambition feels honest. The story becomes about a woman navigating a world built to destroy her. Theatrical edits softened her edges, turning her into a moral lesson instead of a force of nature. Visually, the film retained its grandeur, but emotionally it was restrained. The uncut structure allows consequences to exist without sermon. Amber does not beg forgiveness. She adapts. That was the real threat. A female character who refuses shame. Forever Amber stands as one of the most aggressively censored films of the decade, not for what it showed, but for what it allowed a woman to be. Its uncut form reveals a proto-feminist narrative decades ahead of its time, buried beneath velvet costumes and forced restraint. Number 13. The Woman in the Window, 1944. Film noir often promised darkness but rarely delivered consequences without compromise. The Woman in the Window came dangerously close. The story of a mild man seduced into murder challenged the idea of moral safety. Censors panicked at the implications. The original structure presented a nightmare of desire, guilt, and inevitability. A man fantasizes, acts, kills, suffers. The uncut intent suggested that ordinary people could fall completely without redemption. That idea was unacceptable. Theatrical versions imposed a framing device that softened everything. By altering the ending, the studio transformed tragedy into cautionary fantasy. What should have been a descent into doom became a warning dream. The psychological weight was reduced. The consequences were erased. The audience was protected from discomfort. Restored versions restore menace. The relationship feels dangerous. The choices feel final. The woman is not merely temptation, but catalyst. The man is not innocent, but complicit. The film becomes a study of repression exploding into violence. This film matters because it shows how censorship reshaped meaning, not just scenes. A single imposed structure changed the entire moral universe of the story. In uncut form, it stands among the bleakest noirs of the decade. In theatrical form, it became reassurance. The Woman in the Window proves how close 40s cinema came to true existential darkness, and how quickly that darkness was forced back into the shadows. Number 12. Mildred Pierce. 1945. Mildred Pierce hides its cruelty behind domestic respectability. On the surface, it is a story of motherhood sacrifice and success. Beneath that surface, it is a portrait of emotional abuse, sexual ambition, and moral rot. The production code feared its implications, especially the relationship between Mildred and her daughter. Theatrical versions softened Veda's malice. Her manipulation was toned down. Her sexuality was implied rather than confronted. Dialogue that suggested transactional relationships and moral emptiness was reshaped into jealousy and youthful rebellion. The audience was guided towards sympathy rather than discomfort. In uncut restorations, the story becomes vicious. Veda is not misguided. She is predatory. Her cruelty is calculated. Mildred's devotion becomes tragic obsession. The emotional violence is relentless. The film no longer feels like melodrama. It feels like psychological horror disguised as domestic drama. Sex is present not visually, but emotionally. Power is exchanged through humiliation and dependence. The uncut tone makes it clear that success does not redeem moral collapse. It exposes the cost of ambition in a society that pretends virtue is protection. Mildred Pierce is bold because it weaponizes family. It suggests that evil does not need alleys or guns. It can live at the dinner table. Theatrical censorship tried to soften that message. Uncut versions allow it to land fully. This film stands as one of the most emotionally brutal portraits of parenthood ever produced in the 40s. Its true power only emerges when censorship steps aside. Number 11. The Blue Dahlia, 1946. The Blue Dahlia was born from chaos, a script rewritten mid-production, a murder mystery shaped by fear. The film tackles domestic abuse, infidelity, and post-war trauma at a time when America demanded optimism. Censors demanded restraint. Reality refused. Theatrical versions avoided explicit cruelty. Dialogue around spousal violence was trimmed. The wife's alcoholism was reframed as hysteria. The trauma of returning soldiers was reduced to moodiness. The film was forced to pretend stability still existed. Uncut restorations reveal raw cynicism. Marriage is a trap. Love is transactional. Violence is not accidental. The characters move through a world stripped of illusions. The home is not safe. Loyalty means nothing. This was deeply threatening to post-war identity. The film suggests that war did not end when soldiers came home. It followed them into bedrooms and kitchens. That idea terrified studios. Scenes that emphasized psychological damage were shortened or reframed to avoid social discomfort. In restored form, the noir tone sharpens. Dialogue bites harder. The bitterness becomes unmistakable. The mystery feels less important than the emotional decay surrounding it. The Blue Dahlia is bold because it refused patriotic comfort. It showed America wounded, confused, and morally compromised. Theatrical cuts tried to bandage that wound. The uncut film leaves it exposed. Number 10. The Lost Weekend, 1945. The Lost Weekend was a direct assault on Hollywood optimism. Alcoholism was not a punchline. It was a disease that consumed dignity, morality, and hope. Even so, censorship demanded limits. Theatrical versions softened the despair. Prostitution scenes were trimmed. Hallucinations were restrained. The sense of inevitability was diluted. The story was pushed toward recovery rather than collapse. Uncut versions are merciless. Addiction is relentless. The protagonist lies, steals, and degrades himself without relief. There is no glamour, no poetic escape. The city becomes a trap. Time dissolves into craving. What terrified censors was not the drinking, it was the honesty. The film refuses to punish addiction with melodrama, it simply observes the destruction. That realism felt dangerous. Restored scenes emphasize isolation and self-hatred. The moral framework disappears. The viewer is not comforted, they are confronted. The Lost Weekend is bold because it treats addiction as reality, not metaphor. It broke the illusion that cinema must protect audiences from truth. Even censored, it was radical. Uncut, it is devastating. Number 9. Duel in the Sun, 1946. Duel in the Sun was marketed as romance but functioned as obsession disguised by Western iconography. From the beginning, censors were alarmed by its erotic violence and feverish tone. Theatrical cuts attempted to restrain its intensity, but the film resisted control. The story is driven by lust, hatred, and destructive attraction. Characters do not seek love, they seek domination. Sexual tension bleeds into violence until the two become inseparable. That connection terrified the production code, which demanded moral clarity and emotional distance. Theatrical versions trimmed reaction shots and softened dialogue. Passion was reframed as fate rather than desire. The ending was presented as tragic necessity instead of erotic annihilation. These changes dulled, but did not erase the film's dangerous energy. Uncut restorations restore the heat. Close-ups linger, glances burn. The relationship becomes pathological. The violence feels inevitable because desire is never denied. The final confrontation reads less like justice and more like consummation. The film's boldness lies in its refusal to separate sex and destruction. It presents desire as a force that obliterates reason and morality. That idea was unacceptable in polite cinema. Duel in the Sun survives censorship bruised but unbroken. In uncut form, it is one of the most sexually charged films of the decade, masquerading as prestige drama. It exposes how censorship could trim scenes, but never fully tame obsession. Number 8. The Strange Love of Martha Ivers, 1946. The Strange Love of Martha Ivers opens with childhood murder and never looks back. Its core themes are guilt control and corrupted intimacy. Incest implication hangs over the story like poison. That alone made it a censorship nightmare. Theatrical versions softened family dynamics. Dialogue, implying unhealthy bonds, was rewritten. Emotional cruelty was reframed as stern authority. The film was pushed toward noir mystery rather than psychological decay. In uncut restorations, the damage is unmistakable. Relationships feel diseased. Love is a weapon. Power is maintained through fear and shared guilt. The film suggests that violence inside the family never disappears. It mutates. The characters do not seek redemption. They seek control. Emotional dependence replaces affection. The incest implication remains unspoken, yet undeniable. That ambiguity is what made the film so dangerous. Restored pacing allows silence and tension to linger. Looks carry weight. The past presses constantly against the present. There is no escape from the original crime. This film is bold because it exposes how respectability can hide rot. It suggests that evil does not arrive from outside. It is inherited, protected, and normalized. The Strange Love of Martha Ivers stands as one of the darkest psychological noirs of the 40s. Its true power emerges only when censorship steps back and allows the damage to speak. Number 7. Notorious, 1946. Notorious is often remembered for elegance, but beneath its surface lies one of the most sexually defiant films of its era. Hitchcock attacked censorship through rhythm rather than content. The production code limited the length of on-screen kissing. Hitchcock responded by breaking kisses into fragments. The result was more intimate, more erotic, and more transgressive than a single uninterrupted embrace. Theatrical versions in some territories shortened these sequences further, fearing their sensual effect. Even so, the chemistry remained overwhelming. The film breathes desire through pacing, proximity, and silence. Uncut restorations restore full sequences, allowing emotional tension to build naturally. The romance becomes suffocating. Trust and betrayal intertwine. Love is both weapon and weakness. What makes Notorious bold is its maturity. Characters sleep together without punishment. Desire is acknowledged, not hidden. Female sexuality is central and unapologetic. The film also explores emotional cruelty. Love is manipulated for duty. Affection is withheld as control. These dynamics disturbed censors who preferred clear moral alignment. Notorious proves that censorship could be outsmarted. Without explicit imagery, Hitchcock created one of the most sensual films of the decade. In restored form, its intimacy feels shockingly modern. Number 6. Leave Her to Heaven, 1945. Leave Her to Heaven shocked audiences by placing pure evil inside a flawless smile. The film presents a woman whose love is possession and whose jealousy becomes murder. That alone terrified censors who struggled with the idea of a beautiful female villain without remorse. The theatrical version softened the most disturbing moments. The drowning scene was trimmed to reduce cruelty. Reaction shots were shortened. The emotional coldness of the act was disguised as hysteria rather than calculation. Uncut restorations restore the full horror. The murder unfolds in daylight without urgency or guilt. The calmness is what makes it unbearable. The act is deliberate. Love becomes justification. That psychological clarity was deeply unsettling to the production code. The film refuses to moralize quickly. The character is not punished immediately. Her manipulation continues unchecked. This lack of instant consequence was considered dangerous. In restored form, the film becomes a study of obsession rather than melodrama. Desire is framed as entitlement. Control is mistaken for affection. The film suggests that love can be lethal without ever raising its voice. Leave Her to Heaven is bold because it allows a woman to be monstrous without disguise. It removes madness as an excuse. The uncut version reveals a chilling portrait of possessive love rarely seen at the time. Number 5. The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. The Postman Always Rings Twice pushed sexuality closer to violence than almost any film of its era. From the first glance between its leads, desire is immediate, physical, and dangerous. Theatrical versions muted aggression. The sexual violence underlying the relationship was implied rather than confronted. Dialogue was softened. The brutality of attraction was reframed as romance. Uncut restorations strip away illusion. Desire is predatory. Power shifts through physical dominance. Love is transactional and destructive. The characters are drawn together not by fate, but by hunger. The murder is not heroic or justified. It is messy, impulsive, and rooted in lust. Censors demanded that moral consequences be clear and swift. The film resisted by emphasizing inevitability instead. Restored scenes linger on touch and silence. Tension builds without relief. The relationship feels claustrophobic. There is no escape once desire takes hold. This film is bold because it refuses to sanitize passion. It suggests that attraction itself can be corrupting. That idea challenged the moral foundation of Hollywood storytelling. The Postman Always Rings Twice remains one of the most sexually charged noirs of the 40s. Its true menace emerges only when censorship no longer shields the viewer. Number 4. Gilda, 1946. Gilda became legendary for a single performance, but its power lies in what censorship tried to contain. Rita Hayworth's presence alone was considered dangerous. The glove removal sequence was edited repeatedly. Reaction shots were shortened. The rhythm was altered to reduce erotic buildup. Even so, the scene electrified audiences. Uncut restorations restore timing and tension. The performance becomes hypnotic. Desire is not acted. It is embodied. The character controls the gaze rather than submitting to it. The film also explores sadomasochistic emotional dynamics. Love is expressed through humiliation and denial. That complexity disturbed censors who preferred clear romantic roles. Gilda is bold because it weaponizes charisma. Sexual power is unapologetic. Female desire is central and commanding. Even censored, the film reshaped Hollywood sensuality. In restored form, it feels explosive. The camera does not look away. Neither does the audience. Number 3. Double Indemnity, 1944. Double Indemnity was a direct challenge to the moral spine of Hollywood storytelling. From its opening moments, it announces guilt without apology. The narrator is already broken, already doomed, already confessing. That alone unsettled the production code, which demanded that crime be punished cleanly and desire be buried beneath virtue. The film is built entirely on adultery, lust, and murder. The relationship between its leads is not romantic destiny. It is mutual corruption. Desire does not soften them, it sharpens them. They plan murder calmly, intelligently, and with sexual tension pulsing beneath every word. Censors demanded restraint, especially in dialogue. Lines dripping with innuendo were rewritten or trimmed. Theatrical versions softened some exchanges to reduce erotic charge. Uncut restorations restore the bite. The language feels sharper, more predatory, more intimate. Conversations sound like foreplay disguised as logistics. The characters are not confused or coerced. They want the crime. They want each other. That clarity of intent was deeply threatening to censorship standards. The film also refuses easy redemption. Guilt does not arrive through morality. It arrives through paranoia and decay. The characters are eaten alive by their own choices, not divine justice. The uncut tone emphasizes inevitability rather than punishment. What makes Double Indemnity bold is its worldview. It suggests that intelligence does not prevent evil. It enables it. Love does not redeem. It accelerates destruction. This was a dangerous message in a culture built on moral reassurance. Even in censored form, the film reshaped noir forever. In restored versions, it feels brutally modern. It does not warn the audience. It implicates them. It asks not whether the characters are wrong, but whether anyone would choose differently under the same temptation. Number 2. Scarlet Street, 1945. Scarlet Street is one of the most merciless films of the 1940s. It strips away romance, illusion, and dignity with surgical precision. The story centers on obsession, humiliation, and moral annihilation. It was banned outright in several regions because its darkness could not be disguised. The theatrical versions attempted damage control. Dialogue implying prostitution was softened. Scenes emphasizing emotional degradation were shortened. The cruelty of manipulation was reframed as misunderstanding. These changes did little to mask the despair at the film's core. Uncut restorations restore its full brutality. The central relationship is not love. It is exploitation. One character is drained emotionally, financially, and spiritually. There is no awakening moment, no heroic resistance, only slow erosion. What terrified censors was the ending. Evil is not punished conventionally. The guilty walk free. The innocent are destroyed. Justice does not intervene. Guilt becomes psychological rather than legal. That was considered unacceptable. In restored form, the film becomes existential horror. The protagonist loses everything, including identity. He is left alive only to suffer endlessly. This lack of moral balance shattered Hollywood convention. Scarlet Street is bold because it refuses comfort. It suggests that life does not correct injustice. It simply continues. That idea was unbearable to a system built on moral closure. The film stands today as one of the bleakest American movies ever made. Its uncut form is devastating not because of violence, but because of hopeless clarity. It does not flinch. It does not forgive. It simply observes collapse. Number 1. The Outlaw, 1943. The Outlaw was the censorship war that Hollywood never won. More than any other film of the decade, it exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of the production code. Its controversy was not story or violence. It was the female body filmed without apology. Howard Hughes engineered the scandal deliberately. Camera angles, lighting, and framing emphasized sexuality openly. Theatrical cuts attempted to hide this through editing shadows and cropped shots. Entire scenes were delayed, banned, or withdrawn. Uncut versions restore the visual intent. The film lingers. It stares. It refuses to apologize. That act alone was revolutionary. Sexuality is not punished. It is presented as power. Censors claimed moral concern, but audiences saw the truth. Control was about image, not ethics. The Outlaw proved that censorship could be bypassed through persistence and spectacle. The film itself is not subtle. That is its strength. It forced a public confrontation with hypocrisy. By doing so, it weakened the system permanently. The Outlaw is number 1 because it did not just push boundaries. It broke them. It exposed the illusion of control and changed the relationship between Hollywood and censorship forever. The 1940s were not safe, obedient cinema. They were a battlefield. Every frame carried risk. Every line carried defiance. Theatrical cuts hid discomfort, but uncut versions reveal the truth. Desire was dangerous. Morality was fragile. Control was temporary. These films did not just challenge censorship, they outlasted it, and in their restored shadows, the real history of Hollywood still breathes.